Alright guys, so today's focus is going to be Havoc Tactical's QRB kit. And what we're going to discuss is kind of not how to install it, but what works, what doesn't work, handguard to barrel lengths to outside diameter. So we'll go ahead and kick this off, and we're going to start off first with what doesn't work. We get a plethora of calls and emails, so we're going to go ahead and just chip away at the easy stuff. First of all, if you're going to be trying to use a Havoc with a quad rail, it's not going to happen. So just go ahead and toss that to the side. It does not work. Something else is big handguards. These right here. So if it's got a big outside diameter, it's made for suppressors. It's, you know, make sure y'all can see that. That's, you know, if you can't see it, it's basically 2 inches. So if it's got a 2-inch outside diameter, no go. You cannot use it with a Havoc. Another thing too, we'll go ahead and get this one out of the way. You cannot use a Havoc with this type of assembly. So if you've got the Delta ring, the 2-piece handguard, this will break up here, this will come down here. It's just the old school Delta ring, slip ring style. You cannot use Havocs with these. So just don't even try. It's not even worth the argument and trying to figure out if you can or can't. Right, so next, let's get into what you can use. So from what we found, the biggest outside diameter that you can use is right there on your outside diameter to be able to do this. So let's show you why. If you get into, what happens is these latches right here have to, when they're locked in and engaged, they have to sit right there. And so if you have one of these big outside diameter handguards like this one, it'll probably work. Technically, you could, you know, latch them in, but you're not going to have the gap right here to get your finger underneath here. That handguard's going to come out, and it's probably going to touch these, and you're not going to be able to unlatch them. It's going to be more fight than it's worth. What you're mainly looking for is these Slimline style handguards to use with Havoc. So, I'll give you some more examples. These are, you know, this one here is a CMMG. I think they call it the Mark IV, MK4, or ML something, you know, ML7, ML13, 12, whatever their length is. But this is a Slimline. That one's a good one. This is one of ours. It's a Slimline as well. Now, you'll notice too, you have anti-rotation tabs. Let me show you what these look like on here. And so you see how the anti-rotation tabs are coming in there, and Havoc has gone in and made some cutouts. Now, with that being said, if it's got oversized, let's assume this was a Slimline handguard, but you see how we have these bigger anti-rotation tabs that aren't just, it's not just a little peg that goes inside of there. It's actually got a long stretch of it right here. If this was a Slimline, the short answer is no, you can't use it. But the long answer, if you want to spend the time to custom cut that using a Dremel or a mill, whatever it is, and you want to trim that to fit, you can get it to fit, but you just have to put in some extra work. So it's up to you on what you want to do on that. Now, let's get into your barrel length to your handguard. And what's happening, let me show you on an assembled upper. Basically what happens with the Havoc, usually this part right here is going to mount up here on against your handguard. Since we have the Havoc, we have the receiver plate and we have the barrel plate. These are 2 individual pieces right here. Let me show you. Just so you can see, you have your receiver plate and your barrel plate. And what happens is, once this is installed, your handguard is now going to be pushed off the receiver of where it would normally sit, 1.5 inch. Yeah, it's actually just shy of 1.5, but for all intents and purposes, we'll call it 1.5 inches. Now, the reason why this is important, I'll give you a good example here. So, this is a 7.5 inch barrel setup. And if we were to try to use, so that's a 7.5 inch barrel, this is a 4.5 inch handguard. Typically, on a 7.5 inch barrel, you want to use a 7.5 inch handguard. The only problem that you're going to run into with this, let me try to show you on here, is this right here. This is, of course I've got it upside down, but this is where this would land if you're using a 7.2 inch M-lock or 7-inch M-lock or, you know, handguard with a 7.5 inch barrel with a Cry Havoc, you're going to cover up your barrel threads about that much. And so your blast is going to be inside your handguard. You won't be able to use any muzzle devices, suppressors, etc. because of your slim profile. So you have to take that into consideration. That's why on Cry Havoc setups with a 7.5 inch barrel, we use a 4.4 is only for this reason, is because we've been pushed forward and eaten up some of our barrel space. And so we need a shorter handguard to allow us our threads and muzzle and our flash outside the handguard. So this right here is, let me give you another example. This handguard is 8 inches. Now this is a 7.5 inch barrel in here as well. It's the exact same barrel that's in this one. The only difference is, let's see if I can line these up for you, is we have, on this one we have a Spikes, Bark, and Spider, and this one probably comes back to about right there. And so what this does, our handguards, now this is for these We the People editions only, and I'm sure there's a few others out there, but this is 8 inches, 7.5 inch barrel with about a 3 inch Bark and Spider in there. And so that allowed us to push outside. Now, our We the People handguards are a slim profile, but they have an inside diameter of about 1.6. Yeah, 1.6. And so we did that to allow for bigger muzzle devices, suppressors, and all that to still fit inside of our handguard, but keep the outside slim profile. So you got to be aware of that as you go to start buying your parts and assembling these, is you want your handguard to match your barrel. Give you an example. This handguard that we covered a while ago, this is a call it 11.2 inch. Now this is a 16 inch barrel in here with a mid-length gas system. So this is a mid-length gas system on 11.2 inch handguard. And you'll see that normally it would have been back here a little ways. We would have had quite a bit more barrel stick out. But because we pushed that handguard forward 1.5 inches due to the Cry Havoc, this is what it's going to look like. So what you got to be cautious of too is if you're going to build, say, a 16 inch, just make sure you don't want to buy on this 16 inch barrel, you don't want to buy a 15 inch handguard, because what it's going to do is it's actually going to come out and cover up most of your muzzle. You won't be able to use suppressors and all that. So you're going to have to buy a shorter handguard with your longer barrels. Let's see, this one here, I think we went over this one, 7.5 inch, 5.56, 4.4 inch M-lock. That's the look you're going to get out of that one. This setup right here this is a 10.5 inch barrel on a 7.2 inch handguard. This is the look you'll get out of it. And normally you want to run a 10 inch handguard. Let me show you this one here. So this one is, this is a 12 inch handguard, or I'm sorry, a 12 inch barrel, and this is a 10 inch handguard with a Cry Havoc. And so that's where your landing point will be for this. If you were to try to put this 10 inch M-lock on this 10 inch barrel, which without a Cry Havoc is the ideal setup, what you're going to run into, let me see if I can line this up and let you see it. You can see your handguard is going to land right, you're barely going to have any flash hider exposed outside the handguard. So got to be cautious, guys. You don't want your blast going off inside of the handguard. You want your blast outside. You want your entire flash hider outside the handguard. And you want to be able to take them off and change out your muzzle devices. So just make sure that you account for this. Oh, here, let's cover this real quick. So you're going to notice too, if you order your Cry Havoc kit, it's always going to come with this little silver ring, and it's going to come with one of two options depending on the caliber. It's going to come with your gas tube extension of one of these two types. One shorter, this is pistol caliber, and this is rifle caliber. Now with that being said, the reason why this one's used on pistol caliber, this little short nubbit, is because some pistol caliber BCGs, this part right here, the part that should be your gas key on a 5.56, some of them are pushed forward and they come to about right here. And this one can be used with our bolt carrier group. If your bolt carrier group looks like this one, then you can use the rifle caliber gas key extension. And the only reason why is because how far back that's pushed. And so it'll actually sit about like that. If you have a bolt carrier, which I don't have one here to show you, but this is pushed forward about right there, That's where this shorter nubbit comes in, and it allows that. If you don't get this shorter one, this is going to impact it and your bolt will never go into battery. Now, if you get one of these, and you can convert this to pistol caliber, assuming you don't have your bolt carrier that's pushed back this far, it's pushed up to here, and you have this, but you want to modify it, you can just take a Dremel tool, a mill, whatever, lathe, and cut this down to length. We've even done it with a bench grinder. I mean, you can just take this guy, grab it with a pair of pliers right here, put it on your bench grinder, and grind the length down a little bit at a time until your bolt can come into battery. And there you go. Kind of a rough way to do it, but it does work if you're in a bind. Back to this ring too. Guys, this ring, it's not going to be used on all handguards. What this is actually doing, and we use them a lot with this handguard, with our factory handguards here. And the reason why, you can see these two little screws right here. And what they're doing is there's two slots machined all the way around the barrel nut. And these screws are going into those little slots. Well, what happens whenever you install that barrel nut on this Cry Havoc is the Cry Havoc is a pinch bit different than a mil-spec or any kind of receiver. And so what happens is, if you don't put this ring on, when you slide your barrel nut on, everything will go on normal. Then you'll slide your handguard on, and you'll go to put these in, and they just won't push in. That's because they're not lined up with those two little grooves on the barrel nut. You're going to have to disassemble everything, slide this ring on, then your barrel nut, and then tighten it down. And when you do tighten this little ring down, don't over torque it, because this thing easily eggs. And what will happen is, as you tighten it, when you slide your handguard over, you're going to notice that your barrel may be kicked inside of your handguard to one side or the other. That's because this ring has egg shaped and is pushing everything off to one side or the other. So just make sure, if you're struggling to get these screws in, if they don't just push in with ease, you need to take everything back off and slide this ring on, then put your barrel nut on, tighten it. We usually tighten those down with this ring. It's very marginal. I would say about 35. I wouldn't go any higher than 35, 40 foot-pounds, and that's even really pushing it, because they do tend to oblong and kind of get out of shape real quick. So another thing too on Cry Havocs that you may want to look into, or not look into, but just kind of put into on their instructions. They have a particular, when you're tightening these two screws right here on your latches, they have a particular measurement that you basically stick a tape measure. I think it's like 1.25 inches that you want your gapper to be. That's partially true, but you're not going to mess with the functionality of it. What you're going to mess with by loosening or tightening these two right here. Let me see if I can show you guys. That screw right there and that screw right there. What those are doing is, as you tighten them and drive them in, it's going to make this harder to latch and unlatch. And if you loosen them, it's going to do the opposite. It's going to make them easier to latch and unlatch. Now, the catch-22 with all this is, if you loosen them, you also loosen your grouping. The tighter you get them, the tighter your grouping will hold. So you're going to have to find that happy medium and put them to where you can get them on and off. Now, keep this in mind. I would tighten them further than you think at the beginning, because you're going to develop muscle memory and your fingers are going to get a little stronger after you do it a few times. So you want to get them as tight as possible to where it's pretty hard to get them off and pretty hard to get them on, just to get that grouping to hold really tight. So guys, I think that's everything. I think I covered a few of the handguard questions and all that. So if you guys have any questions, if I didn't cover something, put it down in the comments section below. I'll do my best to get with you and answer those as fast as possible. Or you can send me an email, AmericanResistanceGear@yahoo.com, or call the shop, 936-569-9400. Thank you for your time, and look forward to training the American Patriot.